Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, coming to you 6 days a week as we interview whitetail experts and hear their traditions and personal stories of the hunt. Learn more about the latest gear, discover proven tips, and the latest strategies so you can make your next hunt a success. Now, here's your host, Bruce Hutchin.
This is Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, episode number 300.
Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast. I know it's already episode number 300, but that's pretty special, folks. We started October 31st, 2015, and here it is on December 2nd, and I'm posting the show, and then the show will air in a week and a half. But I'm going to welcome to the show just a wonderful lady, Krissy Marrall. And Krissy's from down there in Georgia, and she is a huntress, and she's a proficient champion tournament archer. She's going to share what it took for her to get into hunting and some of the rigors that, hey, guys, listen, these ladies want to hunt, but they want to be treated just like anybody else when they go into the store. They want to get the right gear that fits them, and it works for them. So that's a part of the show we're going to talk a lot about. But sit back, enjoy Krissy.
Hey, listeners, don't forget to text 33444 Food Plot for your free Food Plot ebook.
Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, and we're heading down to Georgia and somewhere south of Savannah, and we're going to connect with Krissy Marrall. Krissy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be on the show today.
Well, I'm excited because you have a huge Facebook following, and that's how we connected. But more than that, as we said, hunting is a family tradition, and more than that, you said it's an obsession. So let's start right off why you and Buster just love to hunt so much.
We do. We really eat, sleep, and breathe it. If we're not out on the property doing something, then we're sitting in the house talking about it, planning, or shooting our bows to practice for it. So we're just all about it.
Now, where did this start? I mean, somebody had to help pass the hunting tradition along to you. So let's talk about that for a little bit.
All right. Well, I didn't hunt as a kid. I grew up in northern Illinois. I know it doesn't sound like it because I've been in the South for a long time. But I grew up in northern Illinois, and you would think that would be a great basis, to begin a hunting lifestyle, but it wasn't. None of my family hunted. And so I'd never hunted as a kid, but I was passionate about sports. So when I became an adult and I couldn't play sports anymore, because there's not a whole lot of sports opportunities once you're a grown-up lady. And so my ex-husband and his buddies would be out in the yard shooting their bows and things like that. And we went to a expo one day in Atlanta, and I bought my first bow at the expo, and it was a Browning youth model because I'm kind of little. I'm 5'2", and all the specs that go along with a little woman. And so then they didn't have really good archery equipment for women, so I bought this totally set up Browning youth bow for $100.
Wow.
And I never really intended to shoot. Never really intended to hunt. But I got out in the yard and I started shooting, and I got, good with it. And so I decided one day, well, doggone it, I'm sitting here every day watching these hunting videos with the dudes, and so I decided I was just going to go hunt. And so that's how I started. I just decided to get me up and go hunting one day. And so I did. I started practicing every day, and I started going out to the woods, and we had a little piece of property that we hunted on. And let me tell you something, that bow was the hardest thing in the world to shoot, and I was little, didn't know what in the world I was doing. And but I still felt like, I love this, this is cool. And it filled that gap that came from not being able to play sports really as an adult. And so I tried for a long time. I mean, I hunted, every minute I could, and learned a whole lot just being in the woods, because I would go in the woods and just stay. And I didn't have any preconceived notions about hunting or about being in the woods, anything about it. So everything that I learned, I just learned by having my feet on the ground in the woods. And so anyway, I got to where I would go and I'd sit and just wait, and we had just this little 20-acre piece of property in the middle of Atlanta. But we had deer coming to us. We planted a little food plot, and had deer coming to it. And I shot my first deer with that little Browning youth bow. And it was a monster. I had 5 deer out there, 5 big rack bucks out there, and I picked out the biggest one, and I drew, but not before I tried 3 times to draw. And I mean, I struggled and pulled and everything in the world to try to shoot that deer. And I finally got that bow drawn back, and I shot him, and it just skimmed across the top of his back, and he ran about 40 yards, and he just stood there trying to lick that spot, Well, I didn't even... I was discouraged, of course, and I thought, well, shoot, this is a lot harder than what I expected, And so I didn't quit shooting my bow, but I decided I better start, maybe with a rifle. And so we live in Georgia, and rifle season was coming in, and so I went out when rifle season came in, and I decided I was going to go kill me something with that rifle. And so I have a little Savage 308 lever action rifle, and a beautiful little old gun, and it was modified, with a shorter stock and everything, and didn't kick or anything like that. And I had never really shot a gun except for just to practice with that one. And so I went out there, and I sat right probably 2 weeks into season, and I killed a doe, my first doe. And let me tell you something, from then on, I was all about hunting. And I loved it. Killed a lot of deer before I ever killed my first deer with a bow. I tried for 12 years. From the time I bought that bow, for 12 years, I tried to kill a deer with my bow. And every year I'd get it out, and oh boy, I would practice and practice. I went to another bow, finally bought a PSE Mini G, and that was really the first bow that was marketed kind of for women. That I knew of, but what did I know? But that's the one that I got. They set me up perfectly in Atlanta at a bow shop in Atlanta, but it was still really hard, And I killed coyotes with that bow, and I killed hogs with that bow, but I never killed a deer until my next bow. I got a Matthews DXT. And it was a smaller, lighter, really so much easier. And I was so relieved to get that bow. And my first deer I shot with that one, but it was 12 years after I started with the Browning bow.
Oh my goodness! And then you went back, and then at 20 acres. Now, did you have a tree stand when you're in a ground bind, or are you just sitting when you're back again?
Tree stand. I had a ladder. The first one was a homemade. Somebody had welded it together, and it was homemade, and it had plywood, up on it, a plywood bench, just like an old camp bench. I probably could have fit me and all 5 of my siblings up there. It was so big. But I sat in that ladder stand. That's where I shot that big rack buck. And so I would go sit, and I'd sit there, for hours at a time. There was a piece of property that connected to ours, so it was woods around that piece of property. But then another ladder stand on the property is where I killed my first deer out of it.
Now, you mentioned you had a food plot. Did you put that in, or did somebody else put that in?
We did. We put that in. It was that the piece of property that we had bought was a piece of pasture. It was terraced and everything, and so it had little spots of woods, and then it was surrounded by woods on about 2.5 sides were surrounded by woods. So the deer would funnel out of that those woods and onto that food plot. And so they were out there, and it was urban. So, the scent and sounds and everything of town were all on top of you all the time, and they weren't really boogered by all of that. It wasn't until I really got out and started hunting in deeper woods that were not so urban that I kind of learned that you got to be quiet and you got to be real still, and you've got to not smell like, the scents of the city and things like that, and so I learned all that a little along, just going as often as I could.
Now, were you married at the time?
I was married to my first husband.
And so,
Buster,
go ahead.
Buster and I actually met through archery. My first husband and I divorced, and Buster and I actually met through archery. And he was a competitive archer, and he really was the one who finally got me set up really right to be able to shoot archery, to be able to shoot a bow like I needed to in order to be really successful in the woods with one. And I had shot deer with that Matthews DXT. I had shot deer with it. I had shot hogs with it, coyotes with it, shot a bobcat with it. I mean, just the instinct was there, but I was always felt like I wasn't really accurate, and it was an uphill struggle until he really taught me and got me set up with the right equipment that was specifically fit for my individuality.
Krissy, Gene, we're talking about you're an outdoor woman, and you basically were self-taught, and I'm just sitting here marveling, one, of your gumption and your desire. Where did it all come from? Where did the drive to say, "Hey, I'm just gonna go do that"?
Well, my mom and dad are just great people that never thought I can't. Anytime we said I can't, my mom who was a high school English teacher, and a music teacher, and anytime we would say, we would be instructed to do anything, or, given a task, or tried to do anything athletically or whatever, and we said I can't, her finger would come up and one eyebrow would come up, and she said, "What does the Bible say about I can't?" The Bible doesn't say I can't. The Bible says I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. And so you can't argue with that,
No, you
and
can't.
Then just to see their gumption, they were both, graduated from college. My mom a teacher and my dad minister. And they left college and went out to New Mexico and started church from the ground up. I'm talking with nothing but dirt, and had their 3 babies and started a church out there with nothing. And there was never, and their whole life was like that, Nobody ever did it for them. They just did it. And so they taught us, if you want something, you just got to learn how to do it. Even my mom, being an English teacher, we would ask her how to spell something, and she would say, "Go get your dictionary." She wouldn't spell it for us. She made us do it. And I think that just that tenacity and gumption came from them. My dad's family were farmers. My mom's family were farmers. My mom's dad was a pig farmer, and my dad's dad was a farmer in Indiana, and they, just hard-working people with a lot of moxie.
Women in the outdoors is a fastest growing segment of our industry, of the outdoor industry. What advice, 3 or 4 or 5 things would you share with the ladies that are listening to this that say, "Gee, I want to do that. I don't know how." What advice would you give ladies listening to the show?
Well, see where to start. If somebody has not hunted before at all, and like I said, there's not a whole lot of sports opportunities, but there's a whole lot of women who love sports, and this is so perfect for that, to fill that kind of void, because you can't be too old to do it. You can't be too little to do it. You can't be the wrong gender to do it. You can do it till you die. And there's all over the country, every walk of life, it's opportunities are afforded people through WMAs and things like that. And, you know, like Fred Bear, his camo was buffalo plaid. I mean, you don't have to even buy into all of the marketing, even though I think a lot of it is good. You don't have to buy into that. And if you're going to start from ground zero, I would say to go to a place and find somebody who really knows what they're talking about in archery and in firearms, who will talk to you, who, I mean, if your husband or boyfriend or whatever takes you and wants you to get into the sport of hunting, that's great. And yay, you know, great for that guy that wants that. But when you go into a shop or into a place to get outfitted, just insist that they address you and your specifics. And the reason why I say that is because I was set up so improperly with my Matthews when I bought it, until my draw length was 1.5 inches too long. I mean, I had too heavy an arrow. There were so many things that could have been so much better, but because they just looked over my head and spoke to my husband, they didn't take me seriously. And yes, I did not have a whole lot of experience, but it was me that was the hunter, that was the archer, that was the customer, and they didn't take me seriously. And so good was good enough. And I was always taught that good is the enemy of great, and I wanted to be great. And most women do it, you know. And another thing that my mom used to tell us is, whatsoever thine hand findeth to do it with thy might. And I believe that with all my heart, that if it's worth doing, you do it with 100%. And so just when you're going to get outfitted, the first thing is talk to somebody who will take you seriously, who wants great for you, not who just is you know, oh, well, it's good enough. And that to me is so key, because I battled that being a woman in a man's industry for a lot of years. And now it's better. It really is. It's so much better. And there are a lot of great places that you can go and get outfitted, and the shop owners and everything take you seriously, and they do take time with you and everything. But there are still so many, like when I'm at expos and things like that, when I start talking about my experience in the woods, and I have considerable experience now, and I have a house full of dead things on the wall, and I have lots of trophies in my trophy case for archery, especially over the last year. I mean, I've only done archery competitions for about 1.5 years, and I've got a trophy case full of trophies, but they still will glaze over, you know, and almost yawn in my face because they don't take me seriously. So it's better now than it was, but there's still that element that you almost have to insist that they say, hey, you know, take me seriously. I really am worth it.
Krissy Jean, if there's some ladies out there that want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach you?
Facebook message, probably. They can message me. My profile is public and everything. And if they give me a little bit of what they're looking for, then I'll message them back. And you know, I'm happy to help. I was doing that this morning with a young lady who had wanted a little more success. You know, wanted new in the industry, you know, into hunting, and wanted just some advice. And so I was doing that even right up until we started our conversation today, because I know what it is to be, you know, dismissed and to belittle and to just be kind of dog paddling along, trying to make it to the other side and struggling, And so I would be happy to answer any questions that I can, or ask the people who know that I trust that can answer the questions, because I'm not going to just blow smoke about something I don't know about, and everything I always qualify everything with in my experience, because I know by this time in my life that I'm not an expert anywhere for that matter, but certainly not on somebody else's piece of ground, any more than anybody is on my piece of ground.
Thanks for sharing that. And listeners, take heed. Guys out there and people in the business, when a lady comes in, she's there for a reason. Yeah, she's got money in her jeans and she wants to spend it, but it's your responsibility to do the best you possibly can. If you can't, say, hey, I really can't help you because we're not set up. We don't have the right setups in the archery or rifle or any kind of weapon. And to say, you're going to be better served by going to see these people and demand the best from the people trying to service you or sell you something. And I've kind of found out if somebody's just trying to sell me something and not listening to me, then I go, I really appreciate your time, sir, ma'am, but I'm going to go check something else out and go find somebody that'll invest in you as a person, guy or gal. It really doesn't matter. And what Krissy says is true. Sometimes, unfortunately, males, we're guilty of it. We just say she doesn't know anything about hunting. Oh, her boyfriend does, and so they start talking to boyfriend because they're comfortable. And all of a sudden, as you said, well said, they look over the top of you, both figuratively and in reality, and they don't listen to you or talk to you. So people demand, whoever you go to take your business to, demand they get invested in you, and because you can be a long-term client. And your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are absolutely that is well said, and absolutely, because if somebody says, if I walk into an archery shop and I say, for instance, the archery shop that we shoot our league out of here, it's in Pooler, Georgia. It's Wildcat Archery. And when I started going into the shop, of course, they serviced a lot of other women, as far as things like that. When I started going into the shop, I already had my bow that I had bought at another shop in Frostproof, Florida. And David Brimlow's shop down there in Frostproof, Florida, and he's a great Hoyt dealer, and he set me up, and I'm talking, he took time, hours, to make sure it was right, because he knew the struggle I had been through. But then when I came into Bill's shop, he didn't have exactly what I needed, but you know what he did? He found out what I needed, and he ordered it. And he now stocks those items. And when I need something, either I'm going to be in Frostproof and go down there and get what I need from David, or I'm going to go over here to Bill and say, Bill, you got this? And if he doesn't, 99% of the time, he'll order it, because he knows that I'm important enough. I'm worth it, And so now, whenever I'm in town, and people say, where do you get your stuff? You know what I tell them? Hey, if you're down there in Frostproof, go down and see David. If you're up here, get from Bill, because they care.
Well said.
You see what I'm saying? So
I hear you. And I hope our listeners are hearing it, because that's the way people grow great businesses, and that's how referrals, I don't know how many thousands of people are going to listen to what you just said, but people in your country are going to go, oh, maybe I should go see those guys. And they'll walk in and they'll go, well, why are you here? Well, I heard Krissy Jean on Whitetail Rendezvous, and she says you guys know what you're doing. Right.
Well, I'll go ahead and tell you the shop in Frostproof, Spurlow's Outfitters, Outdoor Outfitters in Frostproof, Florida. David Brimlow, expert with Hoyt dealership, and goes all over the country setting up Hoyt dealers. And then that's in Frostproof, Florida. And then Bill Henneman. Bill Henneman, I had to think for a second. in Pooler, Georgia, Wildcat Archery, and they when I first started coming in, they, like I said, Bill didn't have my arrows, but he found out that I use these, and probably a lot of other women would use these. So he started stocking those arrows, and so I'll go down there and buy half a dozen, a couple of times a year or whatever, and so it's great, and they took the time to learn, even though they didn't necessarily have it initially.
Now let's change it up a little bit and go to your tournament, archery. And reading your bio, you started shooting tournament archery in 2015, and you've been pretty successful. How did that happen?
Well, like I said, when I met my husband, Buster, we met through archery. We just got married May 28th of this year. But when I met him, I was not set up properly, and so he started asking questions. He didn't just start throwing me all of his knowledge, because a lot of guys, they just want to impress you, with their knowledge and with their specs and with their, whatever it is. They just throwing it all out there, and so he started. He didn't just say, you need to do this. He started asking questions, and not necessarily questions about my equipment, but about me and my own physical, specs. And mine in particular, I have a heart condition, and I also have diabetes. And so a lot of people don't know that. And I don't let it handicap me. And that's a struggle that I deal with. And a lot of people do not know that, because I go and do pretty much what I want. But see, that limits me to a low poundage bow for the most part. And some days I have 10 arrows in me, some days 1. And some days I can go out there and stand and shoot for hours. And but those were, certain that factored in. Then my frame, I have long arms comparatively, and then because my back and my torso are narrow, and so when they measure me for my archery equipment, it doesn't necessarily measure out exactly like your draw length would be. And that's why my draw length was set up improperly, because they didn't factor in a lot of things that Buster actually asked me and watched me shoot, and he shot my bow and, just went through steps that were meticulous about getting me set up properly. And so that, once I was set up properly, then I started learning about how to shoot properly, learning basics and tweaking those basics that I learned from him to my own individuality. There are some things, like when I started with my Hoyt, I took the grip off because he shoots a big Hoyt, target bow. So I'm like, well, I'm going to take the grip off of mine because I'm going to shoot like he does, And all the pro shooters, you see them in the archery magazine and everything, none of them have a grip on their bow. Well, because again, I'm small frame, but I have my hands are skinny, and so it just didn't work for me because the way that my hand rested on the grip. And so we put the grip back on, which isn't conventional necessarily for shooting for the pros, but it works specifically for Krissy Jean. So I put that grip back on my bow, and it steadied me a little more. And so all these little things just tweaked here and there, and I traditionally for target indoor, you would shoot the smallest pins you can get away with in a real tiny peep. But because of my age, I can't see as well as I used to, and a lot of us are going through that, But I can't see as well. So this last season, I said, well, I want to try a spot hog sight and one with a larger pin. And, I shoot a 5-pin sight and shoot the Bowhunter setup when I shoot my target archery. So we went with that, and I'm looking and I'm like, yeah, that works better for me than what somebody would just say, oh, you have to have this. This is what this is what all the pros shoot. But those little tweaks and specifics really just keep elevating my game, and the fact that I married the coach helps a lot. It helps a lot, So he'll sit around and just think, I bet you could do this or tweak this or just try this. And oh boy, now let me tell you something. I can argue with a stump. And so he'll tell me, he'll say, try this. And first thing I do is give him a reason why it won't work for me. But then I do. Then I'll eventually, he'll be at work and I'll come home and I'll go try it. Lo and behold, it works.
Now, how have you won so many state championships in such a short time, shooting tournament archery?
Well, I tell you, last year we just decided we were going to shoot everything we could, and we both worked full-time jobs. So we just decided we were going to shoot everything we could. So we made up our minds we were going to shoot all of the state shoots, and of course as many local shoots as we could. We shoot our league at the shop. We'll go shoot tonight, a 5-spot at the shop in Pooler, and so we just decided we would start shooting, everything we could. Well, when I first started shooting tournament archery, when the first thing I did was shoot just a little tournament with our league in the shop, and I was so nervous. I thought I would die. I thought I would just die. And I got in the shop, and the guys, I had been going up there for a couple of weeks with Buster. And so I come in and I'm Buster's girlfriend, and then he's like, well, she shoots a lot. She's killed a whole lot of things with her bow, and, she's an avid hunter and all of that. And they're like, you come on up here and shoot, and we won't mess with you, and come up here and shoot. You'll have fun and everything. So I did. I decided one day I'm gonna come up in there and shoot. I thought I wasn't even gonna get my bow back. I was so nervous. And let me tell you something. They lied. They all messed with me. They all messed with me. But they knew. All of them were experienced. Well, I say all of them were. A lot of them were experienced shooters, and a lot of them shot NFAA stuff and had been for years. And so they knew exactly what I needed was all of that pressure and all of that distraction and all of that, and they wanted me to succeed. They're my big cheerleaders, and so they got up there and harassed me and stood real close on the line, and everything else. And I had to learn how to shoot through it. I had to learn how to shoot through all of that. There's not ever going to be ideal situation, ideal circumstances, even on the line shooting indoor. It's not ever going to be perfect. Something is going to happen. There's going to be, somebody who is a drama queen next to you, or there's going to be noise if you're shooting outdoor. There's going to be wind. There's going to be all kind of distractions, and you just have to learn to shoot through it. And so I think not only did I have a great coach and who really has worked and just wants it as bad for me as I want it myself, but I have friends at the shop who really did know that I needed all that, and they weren't going to just baby me and pat me along, but they jumped all over it from day one when I got in there and started shooting. And then we shot everything we could, and it's just like things would just click along. I would get out there, and one day I just wasn't as nervous. My first couple of targets, I might have been nervous, but then all of a sudden it was just me and the target. And so it was like everything was just kind of white noise behind me, and it didn't matter what it was. It was just white noise because it was just me and the target. And I just learned that. But that comes from just shooting every time you can. Just every time you can. There's no substitute. There's no amount of knowledge that somebody can pass along through Facebook. There's no textbook. And I've got friends that have written books on hunting and archery and things like that. There's nothing, not anything that can take the place of shooting arrows, and especially shooting competitive arrows, even if it's just at the league on Thursday night.
Krissy Jean, we're at that time that you get about 90 seconds here to give some shout outs to folks, and we got to wrap the show. Unbelievably, 30 some minutes has already gone by. So
wow.
Get some shout outs and then we'll close the show.
All right. My first shout out goes to my husband and coach and archer extraordinaire, Buster Marrall, and I love him dearly. And then I love my friends at Phillips Outdoors, Outdoor Sense, and I believe in their products and use them regularly. I love CMO's Kids. Look them up. It's a volunteer nonprofit organization, and they help get kids in that don't have any father figure in their life, or have no way to get out into the woods, handicapped kids and things like that. They get them out into the woods and free of charge to them and their families. Get them out. Look them up online, cmoskids.com. They do great things. And then, of course, the Lord for letting me do this great sport.
Well, Krissy Jean, it's just been an absolute pleasure, and you brought a lot of smiles. I think we gave some food for thought out to the listeners across North America. So on behalf of Whitetail Rendezvous listeners, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, break. End the show. It's 34. I got to write this down or I'll forget. 34, 40. Thanks so much. You're just a charmer. I mean, I could listen to you talk all day.
Oh, thank you. Well, I enjoyed it. And like you said, you hit a passion and then it just rolls out. Yeah,
that's the whole secret. That's the whole secret to my show. People ask me all the time and said, how do you do what you do? I said, it's not me. All I do is find people that are passionate about whitetail hunting, one, and my guests are, and two, then I let them talk. It's your show. I'm the guy and I'm the host, and everybody knows that, but it's really your show, and you're just sharing what you believe in. I mean, some of the things you shared about your mom and dad, you shared your faith, you shared a lot of great things that people need to hear, and you did it so well. I just really appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thank you. I hate I didn't talk about specific deer kills and things like that, but
we'll do it next time.
There's not enough time. Yeah, we'll do it next time. I'll tell you all about my Missouri deer.
Well, I can't wait to do that. And again, you are episode number 300 for Whitetail Rendezvous. So I can't tell you what that means to me, because it's been a journey. Pardon me. It's been a journey. My next milestone will be 500. Then it'll be 1,000. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's just exciting. And because I'm 70 years old, you probably have no idea, but I'm 70 years old.
You're 70 years old?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, it's just, and my wife wonders why I do this, because I just have been hunting whitetails for over 50 years, hunting North America for over 50 years. And, I just love the people in the industry and real people. Yeah. There's some people.
Yeah, I love to hear people's stories. Yeah. As much as I love to tell my own, I love to hear everybody else's.
Yeah, and that's what the show's about. So, I thank you. What's going to happen now, you'll probably be up in 2 weeks. I'll send you the day of the show. I'll say, hey, you're live, and you'll see it on Facebook or Twitter. Now, do you have Twitter accounts too, or just on Facebook?
I do have a Twitter account. It's not nice. It's my political vent.
Okay. How about Instagram?
No, I don't have Instagram.
Okay, so we'll.
Should I get an Instagram?
Pardon me, ma'am?
I said, should I get an Instagram?
I would.
I mean, there's thousands of my friends that are on Instagram.
Yeah, I definitely would get that platform. Okay. Because you can share
now,
pictures.
What is Instagram? I mean, it's pictures? Just
pictures and videos. It's more that.
Oh, okay.
And there's not the same conversation, but it's really easy. I use selfies all the time when I'm hunting. So here's the sun coming up, and I'll say, hey, you guys, listen, here's the owls hooting. And I'll click it on, and then I'll send it out to a couple thousand people, and that's what I do. But I think Instagram's a great platform. You got great presence on Facebook, and those are I use 3 of them. I use Twitter. I've got almost 18,000 followers on Twitter, so I mine that quite heavily. And then I have a number of pages on Facebook. So that's what I do. And it just depends what you want to do in the industry. And we can talk about that at a different time. Who do you want to come? What kind of voice you want to have in the industry? Because all you have to do is figure out, okay, this is really how I want to help women, or this is what I'm going to dedicate to kids, and talk to people like Brenda Valentine. Brenda's a good friend of mine. If you know her, I'd reach out to her and say, Brenda, you're, the first lady of hunting in North America.
She's my hero.
Well, do you know her?
No, she's my Facebook friend, but I don't know her personally. But she's my hero because she's girly girl and she still gets out there and still up in the woods.
Oh, she's unbelievable. What I'll do, I'll send you an email and I'll just send it to you and Brenda. I'll say, hey, Brenda, this gal's got something going on. She was just on the show, and it might be great if you guys could connect.
Oh, that'd be sweet. Yeah. My mom's from Tennessee too.
Because sometimes she said, because I've never killed I've killed one turkey in Wyoming, and she said, you got to come down here and turkey hunt. And she's had some of her friends on the show, and I've developed a good relationship with her. So intro to
now, where are you?
Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Oh, okay. All right. I've only been to Colorado one time, Winter Park.
Well, it's a great state, and I grew up out east, and that accent went way away when I went to Wisconsin to school, married a girl from Green Bay 46 years ago, and I ended up in Colorado, and a company told me I was working for this company and doing a good job for them. They said, well, you got to move to Minneapolis. I said, no, I don't. So I threw 20 years away. I just said, no, I don't. And they said, really? I go, really? They said, really? I go, really? It was a 5-minute.
That's great.
My career of 20 some years ended in 5 minutes.
I grew up in northern Illinois. I grew up right in Rockford. And I left home as a teenager, and didn't look back. I didn't go back home for 20 years.
Oh my goodness. I left home because I went to college, and I just go home because I didn't have any place to go to, and I had a summer job. But, basically at 17, I was on my own.
Yeah, me too. That's when I left home, and I didn't go back for 20 years. And my mom was so mad at me when I left home. And she's a hard woman. She's mellowed with age for sure, but she was a hard woman. I admire her, and I think now, especially now in hindsight, of course you forgive your parents for a lot of things when you get older and have kids of your own. But she was a hard woman, and my personality is just like it is right now all the time. It doesn't change. And for one thing, I'm so much like her. But I questioned everything, and I wanted to go do things that weren't necessarily didn't necessarily fit, that round peg in the round hole. I was more like the square peg in the round hole. And just never felt like I fit in until I moved to Georgia. And then I've always said I felt like there was a Krissy-shaped piece cut out of Georgia, and it needed me to come down here and fill it.
There you go. Hey, girl, I got to go, and I got a lot of work to do for my shows for next week, and you're my last recording. So, just thank you so much for just being you, and I can't wait to connect again.
All right, great. Thank you.
Stay tuned for the next episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. We're going to connect with Jim Campbell, who's a videographer in Wisconsin, and he works for Red Shutter Media. He travels all around doing what a lot of you guys and gals are thinking of doing or doing right now, and that's filmmaking in the outdoors. Stay tuned. It's going to be a good show.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous, where you can listen and learn from the experts so you can be more successful on your next hunt. Until next time, listen, learn, and succeed.